Hi guys, I just wanted to make a different type of video tonight. I usually find information that's just really difficult for me to add into the artistic videos that I do. I'm going to start making these videos when I find information that just doesn't quite fit in while I'm trying to weave all the clips together. So I saw this morning. It says Ripple's XRP lawsuit behind KAJ Labs CBDC trial in Brazil, question mark. So this is November 4th, and apparently KAJ Labs is this blockchain company that's partnered with the Central Bank of Brazil, and they're donating $95 million towards Ripple's legal defense fund. So it says that Brazil plans to digitalize the Brazilian real, and this could release in early 2022. So KAJ Labs Lithosphere will assist with distributed ledger technology, tokenizing the bonds and wholesale payment tokens using its custom blockchain interoperability solution. The trial will explore both forms of tokenized money to settle debenture or bond transactions to be issued, settled, and cleared on a permission blockchain. So, I mean, the article, and you guys have to be really careful with crypto magazines and crypto newspapers, because a lot of times they'll report misinformation or kind of put a spin on it that's not quite truthful. So this is kind of suggesting that Ripple's involved with the Central Bank of Brazil. Now, this is Jim Cunha, and Jim Cunha is part of the Federal Reserve of Boston. He's the vice president of payments and fintech. So he's somebody that I would think would have trusted information just because of the position that Jim's in. So this is a video Jim's in called Digital Currency, the Breakthrough to Mainstream Media is on the Horizon. This came out November 2nd, 2021. Alright, so I'm going to play a small clip, but as you can see just from the screenshot, Jim's doing his demonstration. It says Retail CBDC, Brazil, working with Ripple to build a prototype. So this is his presentation, right? So he works for the Fed. He's high up in the Fed. He's the vice president of secure payments, right? And now, so this is a little bit different than what this article is saying. This article is saying on the wholesale side, KAJ Labs is working on tokenizing money and everything. So it's not exactly the same exact thing, but it kind of shows the connection that they're trying to make, right? If Ripple's working with the retail CBDC. So let me play some short clips from this video.
Point, you do have to worry about whether there's an impact on deposits, which also affect their ability to lend. So I think those are some of the major risks I would see.
Good. Well, thank you. So let's continue drilling down, Jim. Let's talk some more about what the Fed is doing with CBDC. You want to tell us a little bit more detail about that?
Sure. Okay. I'm sorry. I'll mention one more thing. This is just what's happening around the world in wholesale CBDC. Okay. And I won't go into detail here, but if there's any interest in the wholesale space, I'll talk a bit about this. But every one of these countries has some significant documentation on what they're building and why. So I'll just say for reference for later conversation. So if you go to the next slide, we can talk about.
All right. So then he brings up the wholesale parts, right? And it does have Brazil down here working on the wholesale side. So on the first side, he states Ripple, Brazil, retail CBDC. Now on the wholesale side, we see Brazil is also working on a central bank digital currency. So we don't know exactly if this is true, although there's a good chance that it could be, right? I'm pretty confident to say that the retail part of this is true, since Jim is presenting this in his presentation. So also Brazil, so France, King Solomon has found information about the Bank de France and Ripple and Ethereum working together. There's also Singapore, which Project Ubin, there's a 2017 document that states that they're also working with Ripple. The Japan and ECB Project Stella it's supposed to be Project Stella with an A. They're also working. They're working on a platform that's going to testing Interledger protocol. So the other part of this is right here. Let me play this.
Are Feds taking on a similar role, or are you taking it on for the nation?
Yeah, this is actually on behalf of the Federal Reserve System. This is not just Boston. There are some people that work out of the Board of Governors, and what they're doing is something called the Tech Lab, where they're looking at distributed ledger, but from a different lens. They're not building a CBDC like we are, but they are looking at technology, distributed ledger specifically, to say, how would you think about a CBDC that interoperates with another one? How would you think about this new technology for other financial services? So this is, I'd say, the deepest experiment, but we do have other people within the Fed that are thinking more broadly about blockchain types of systems and how they may be a benefit. And Bitcoin. And so all these middle ones are, what happens if the private sector has control of the money supply and the central bank loses some ability to both manipulate for monetary policy goals, but also what if all these private cryptocurrencies out there? Most importantly, though, is the last item. In March of 2020, there were 2 bills introduced as part of the CARES Act. They weren't successful, but they would have directed the Fed to create a CBDC and make CARES Act payments that way. So even though they weren't successful, this just shows why the Fed has to be studying technology deeply in case a bill is passed that says build one. We need to be ready to answer to that charge. So go to the next slide. I'll talk about exactly what.
Okay, so the CARES Act in March 2020 was supposed to distribute our funds using a Fed coin, right? And that later was revised so they didn't have to use the Fed coin. So now he's saying that this is the drive for them to move forward with central bank digital currencies, and it's really putting the heat underneath them. So, okay, this is another article that is when this was in June 15th, 2020, and Marjorie Delatine said in a video that they're going to extend their services to Brazil, to the Philippines. So if Brazil is letting Ripple use ODL in their corridors, right? The central bank has to approve all of that stuff. So Ripple needs to get approval from the central bank. Now it looks like they had approval, and they're also working on their CBDC platform. So this is Marjorie Delatine.
Money being locked up in Nostro accounts.
No, I think the way that the correspondent banking is working is precisely based on this nostro vostro, and this is creating lots of trapped capital. Now, the thing is, okay, is there any way of doing that? And I think I refer that to in the beginning of one of the question is there any way to source on-demand liquidity? And this is not necessarily for US dollar or euro, it's more for markets that you don't necessarily want to keep liquidity, and you want to really move funds when you need it. So the way that we are working on this, and this is a live product that it is used in multiple corridors, is using XRP, which is our native crypto assets, as a bridge between the two let's say fiat currencies. And this is completely revolutionizing actually the way that the pre-funding is happening today. So you really on the fly, you move funds. And we extend these services now to more and more corridors, typically corridors, exotic corridors with lots of challenges, like Philippines, very soon in Brazil. So there are, let's say there is a big agenda and roadmap on that. So this is changing the Nostro-Vostro relationship.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so she's saying Brazil and the Philippines are open corridors, and the beauty behind this is that you don't have to hold their currency, right? You can instantly convert their currency into the other local currency, right? So we're in this environment of mass inflation where the U.S. and some of the bigger nations, right, they're not worried too much about hyperinflation, but all of these other smaller economies are starting to see massive devaluations in their currencies. So right now, XRP being able to convert the currencies without people holding on to these currencies is a huge right now. And it's just going to continue. You're going to continue to see currencies being devalued to a point, where this solution is going to be more and more attractive for banks, for financial companies, for big corporates, right? Like Amazon or Tesla or whoever, right? They don't have to hold that currency. Let's say they do business in one of these nations, they can convert it instantly into a stronger fiat or another asset completely using some of these ODL solutions. So this was the other thing that I thought was interesting that kind of fits into this is R3 had a report that says approaches to central bank digital currencies in Brazil, and there's a very long history with R3 and Ripple, so I won't get into that. However, I do think this is interesting, and one of the snippets says there are about 210 million people across the world's 8th largest economy. So Brazil is a pretty large economy, and if they have a lot of money leaving their country for exports, imports, that's a corridor that's going to be liquid that's going to be available for ODL. So the other thing is, according to the this is the Central Bank of Brazil. I forget exactly what BCB stands for, but it means the Central Bank of Brazil. It says the conditions for the adoption of the Brazilian CBDC will be achieved in 2 to 3 years. And then this part said Brazil could be ready for digital currency next year. And this was an article that was July 30th, 2021. So they're moving forward, and you see how there's something in common here. It's nations with their currencies that are being devalued quicker are the ones that are willing to update sooner. So this is another clip that I thought is interesting. So let me play this for you guys.
Fast national rails. How are you thinking about the future of interconnectivity, within a country and between countries?
Yeah, that's a terrific question, and ties back to Dougal's point about cross-border payments and cross-border transactions. And we actually haven't spent a lot of time talking to this panel about that. Probably should have, but that's an area where beyond real-time payments, probably the highest degree of modernization and change is taking place, right? So we're all familiar with the SWIFT GPI model, and we know what SWIFT has done in terms of connecting GPI to domestic instant payment systems, for example, in Australia or other parts of AP. And this is happening all over, right? It's happening with P27 in the Nordics. It's happening with multi-country RTGS in the Middle East with Buna, for example. So on the back end, if you will, network end, this is already happening. There are networks converging and connecting in different ways. And a lot of this is made possible by the fact that most of these are now ISO 20022 based, which makes it easier for them to talk to each other. What hasn't happened yet, needs to happen, is the ability for banks and FIs to provide those services, those multi-network services, to customers, so that a customer no longer has the experience of making a SWIFT payment or making a payment through Ripple or Wise or whatever. They have the experience of, I'm making a cross-border transaction. And that could be a retail customer, it could be a small business customer, it could be a large corporation. But ultimately, it's the ability to make that money move. What the bank needs to do, coming back to, I think, the first question or the second question that was asked, is really simplify it so that is the experience, and the bank takes care of the routing, right? So if it's going to Beijing, maybe it goes through GPI and something else. If it's going to Stockholm, maybe it goes through regular SWIFT and then P27. Bills are there, and it is going to be possible to do this. So it's the opportunities there for the taking.
So all right, so he's saying that all of these payment systems are going to come to a common standard, the ISO standard, right? And Ripple was involved with Faster Payments Task Force. They're involved with the Central Bank of Brazil. They definitely have a say with all this stuff, and they're pushing for it. So if you want to watch this video, it's on Payments Canada, which is the payments channel for the Bank of Canada, and it's called New Rails, New Train, Smart Monetization and Payments. And everything's going to be updated and going to have a common standard. So you go from the Ripple network to the Stellar network to the Swift GPI network, and everything can move fluidly throughout all this. So next piece of information is Andre Chan. So he's the lead at SCB TechX Saber Labs, right? So Saber Labs is a Solana company, I believe, so which is interesting. But he's Siam Commercial Bank, and that was also a Ripple partner. So listen to what he has to say.
Call out really like the areas of market potential and customer growth that we are really heavily looking at. Siam Commercial Bank has already been investing in a lot of cross-border payments, and they have actually run a very successful program back from 2017 that is based on Ripple. So some of you may know Ripple in the open community. We actually use Ripple for a lot of cross-border payments and remittance. This is something that has increased the so-called liquidity that we have actually managed. And now we are trying to think about what new era can payments actually be thinking about with the introduction of CBDC, as well as how we actually want to expand our blockchain applications. There are other things that require like loans and proof of assets, and trade financing is a very big business over here in Thailand as well. One of the very successful cases that actually came from a subsidiary under Siam Commercial Bank. It was a company called Digital Ventures. They are a full trade financing firm that runs all of their trade financing on blockchain as well as R3 Corda, right? And then so on and so forth, where you can just kind of think about all the use cases that your companies would be looking for in the future.
So all these networks are being built, right? And they're all different types of networks. And R3's building them, Solana's building them, Ripple's building networks, right? And everything's going to come together with common standards, and you're going to be able to move fluidly through one network to the next network. So this is all exciting, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.